We are getting ready for the Super Bowl. We got a lot to talk about, not only in the NFL, but big story in the NBA as well. It's all coming up in just a moment with Sean Salisbury, and then Ryan in Sacktown will join us as the Kings conclude their road trip with 2 games against the Rockets, who have the worst record in the NBA. But the Kings right now are playing like a team that has the worst record in the NBA. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. All coming up here on If You Don't Like That. And it's great to welcome in Sean Salisbury. Sean, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, my man. How about you?
I'm doing good. I wouldn't want Kyrie Irving on my team. I've said that for the last couple of years. You want to talk about Mark Cuban and the Mavericks rolling the dice. This is the MO of Cuban. He's not afraid to take gambles. I'm very skeptical. I don't know about you. I'm very skeptical about Irving and Doncic working out together. I'm skeptical about Irving being happy. I'm skeptical about him showing up to work every day. I don't understand it, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah, we're going by history, Grant. We've talked about it. Phenomenal talent.
Yep.
And is a difference maker on the court when he's right, but can be just as big a headache as he is a positive to an organization, and that becomes a problem. He's a rental. Now, I know Mark Cuban obviously thinks he can get him beyond this year, but you're giving up a first, Dinwiddie. I mean, you're giving up 2 good players that can go help Brooklyn, that are not guys that are just, a throw-in. And then
right.
That's exactly right. Dinwiddie's been there before with this franchise, and 2 second-rounders and a first-rounder, in hopes that, when you go in all in like this, Grant, we plan on winning the NBA title. Now, Doncic has begged for – short of begging, he's asked for help all year long. The question is this the right help? Now, I can tell you there's going to be a game, Grant, you and I both know it. One's going to hit 40, the other's going to hit 38 in a game, and they're just going to go off, right? The question is, will there be any fracture as it rolls along? Will Kyrie – which guy is it? Is it the malcontent, or is it the ultra-gifted player on the court? Mark, I guess, thinks that he can fix it the second half, and Kyrie's talented. Will he get in the way of Doncic? Will he add to his game? Where are they? But it's a high risk. Put it this way. Big reward, but maybe a bigger risk, considering that he can do whatever he wants and the season's over. And we know he wants to be a Laker, apparently. So, and they made sure they didn't trade him there on purpose.
Well, at the end of games, when it's tied or it's a one-possession game, I know who's getting the ball with the Dallas Mavericks. The ball's going into the hands of Luka Doncic, and more times than not, that guy delivers. All right, now what happens? All right. In that same situation, you're Jason Kidd. Who's getting the basketball?
Well, I think I know who he'd want to have it, but I also know who may decide that he's going to take it. There's maybe one of those drawn up for Luka. Kyrie decides, well, he's taking it off the dribble, and decides that he's going to do it. Now, listen, he'll knock down those shots too, but we know, listen, the alpha on that team is still Luka Doncic, regardless of what Kyrie thinks. And while Kyrie is a extremely gifted guy, he's never won a title when he's been the number one, right, Grant?
No.
And obviously when they won it in Cleveland when he was with LeBron. But wherever else he's been the other guy. I mean, when I say other guy, Jason Tatum and him were together for a short period of time in Boston. While he may have been the star, Tatum was emerging as the guy. And but he's always better as the other guy, and he doesn't carry a franchise. It all comes down to me. Will it be a malcontent, or will it be a guy who wants to fit in and be a guy, or if he has to be the biggest piece to the puzzle? And then all the rest of the stuff from interviews and the rest of it, who knows what guy's showing up. I understand the risk. I mean, if you're doing it for Cuban, if you're doing that, but you damn well gave up way too much if you don't win an NBA title this year, and if Kyrie walks on you at the end of this year as an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to find out for sure. All right. Let's talk NFL. We got the Super Bowl week. I want to, first of all, kind of pick up where we left off last week with what's going on in Houston with DeMeco Ryans being the head coach. All right. I'm curious. You are now the general manager of the Houston Texans. All right. You don't have the number 1 pick. You know the team ahead of you is not taking a quarterback. Tell me what your strategy is entering the draft. What do you think is the biggest need on your football team if you're the general manager of the Texans?
Well, the first two things I do is, one, you ask yourself, is the franchise changer on my franchise? And that's the answer is no. At quarterback, Davis Mills is going to be in the league, a long-time smart guy, good guy to have backing up, a good start for you. So that's one. I know that the two guys that are in this Super Bowl, well, they have great players around them. Both of them have franchise quarterbacks that have both been. They're going to finish in the top three in the MVP. And last week, guess what? Joe Burrow's pretty good. And if the 49ers, maybe a little bit of the aberration, but Brock Purdy going into the game was playing like a Pro Bowl quarterback with his numbers. So there you have it. If it was me, Grant, I've said loudly that I would draft Bryce Young, and I would, with the 12th pick, I would draft a home run hitting wide receiver. John Mechie's going to come back hopefully from, I believe it's non-lymphoma cancer, and he was a great player at Alabama.
Excellent player.
Cooks will be gone. They're going to run him out. He's become and I want him, after he walked away and not got traded and decided to take a week off because he was frustrated, out. And he keeps, everything he says keeps leading to he wants out. Well, then oblige him, get him out. And that'll be fine because up until this point, I really like Brandon Cooks in his career. He's been a consistent player, but he's too much chatter for me to be a guy who wants to be here. Now, maybe they can change his mind, but for that, I would go forth like he's not going to be here. So with that, I go quarterback receiver. Now, there's schools that thought you can go. Let me add, Grant, and when you're sitting around the table, if you're my head coach, I'm Nick Caserio and you are D'Amico Ryans. And I say, okay, well, what about this scenario? If we hire Bobby Slowick, who's the passing game coordinator for the 49ers, we get a head coach for the 49ers. You know what the guy, and Joe Montana came out and said about San Francisco. He goes, I don't know why the 49ers are doing that. Just start Garoppolo. Sign him and start him. And it's logical. I mean, listen, Trey Lance has not proven he's a winner in the league. We don't know yet. Jimmy has.
He can't even play.
That's exactly right.
We don't know if he can play.
What if you're the Texans and you say, let's do this? Let's sign Jimmy, starter. And if you don't want to draft a quarterback too great, then either trade out for an extra first-round pick to the 4th pick and let the Colts move up and draft who they want into the 2 hole so they don't have to get to the 1 hole. And then you got 3 first-rounders, or Jimmy and get the quarterback. And even if it's not Bryce Young, if they like Levis more, Stroud, I think Bryce Young's done nothing to me. If Bryce Young was 6'2", we would not be having any fucking conversation about it's because he's 6 foot 195. So the measurables. If he was Will Levis's size, it would be Bryce Young and everybody else in this draft. You got Collins that's got potential. You got Mechie. You got to get a tight end somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd round. And I would go get a wide receiver at 12. That's me if I was running this program. But real quick, if they all of a sudden trade and the Colts jump them right to number 1 with the Bears, right? And they draft the guy they want. And you think that the quarterback, the number 2 quarterback, you like him, but you don't love him. Then I would go get a veteran. I would not draft the quarterback. I would draft somebody like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, or trade out and go get another number 1, get a receiver at 12, or if you like Anthony Richardson, if he's available at 12. But if you don't love the quarterback, you can't draft him because it'll set your franchise back if it's a bust. So whoever it is, but I personally today, things change over 3 months. I would go quarterback, and I would go wide receiver to you got to score in this league a lot of points, but I would also kick the tires on Garoppolo if it's the 49ers system to see if Jimmy would be interested in being that guy right here in Houston because he knows what's going on. Or if you don't want to muddy the water, you say, here's Bryce Young, here's Levis, you're the starter, let's go play.
I'm not moving up 1 spot to take Bryce Young unless I absolutely cannot live without the guy.
Exactly
I'm just not doing it.
You don't bid against yourself, and you are right, Grant.
That's right.
Listen, people say, well, build around the guy. Listen, you never if you know there's a franchise quarterback that you love, that you're in love with, you don't wait for 3 years. You draft him, and then hopefully he's coached right, and you put a team around him. It doesn't go the other way around. Now, sometimes it does, but that's not how you're scheduled to build a team. You get Josh Allen, you build around him. You get Jalen Hurts, you add receivers like Smith and A.J. Brown. So that, to me, that's how you do. You get Mahomes, and all of a sudden you start guys around him. So, but you have to love that guy because when you draft him that high, you expect him. The truth is, Grant, when I draft a quarterback in the first 2 or 3 picks, I expect him to be a 10-time Pro Bowler and a Hall of Famer and to win Super Bowls for me. So if you're questioning it, you cannot You cannot draft him. So
hey, I always go with Ernie Accorsi. I'm a Giants fan. Ernie Accorsi gave up a lot to get Eli Manning when they made that trade with the Chargers. That pick ended up being Sean Merriman, okay? So, but he won 2 Super Bowls, okay? And he was a franchise quarterback, and we get it, blah, blah, blah. That's when you move up. If you're a general manager and you can't live without the guy, then you do what you have to do to get that guy. It's that simple.
Yeah, no, and Grant, one last thing. People talk about Carr in Houston, and Derek Carr's name's come up
a
lot, excuse me. And I don't care about David Carr having been here. That doesn't mean anything to me as far as if I like Derek Carr.
Who cares?
Derek Carr's a good player. But here's what I ask you. Do you want to trade for Derek Carr and give up assets and pay him $40 million a year? Or do you want to go I'm talking about if you were going to get into the veteran free agent market or trade market, or do you want to go try to give Jimmy Garoppolo 18 to 20 million a year? He made 6 last year, 20 million a year. And I think that's probably stretching it, and not have to give up one asset for him. Plus, I think Garoppolo as a starter is like 38-17. One thing Jimmy does do is win. You don't have to trade for him. So between the two, while I love the numbers Carr can put up, I know one thing: Jimmy wins. Now we'll see if that happens if he ends up signing with a place like Houston. I'm drafting a quarterback if I love him.
All right, I'm looking at the names that you've just mentioned. My opinion, looking at that roster and looking at all of the needs on the Houston Texans, I'm not so sure that there's a quarterback that's realistically available right now, whether it's in the draft or, as you said, a veteran, that's going to make the Houston Texans a playoff team next year. So
they're not.
That's my point. So, Carr, Garoppolo, this team's got so many levels of improvement that needs to happen,
Grant, what if I said this? Let's say, I don't care if you want Levis or whoever it is, right? They're number 2. Let's say this. You got Tunsil, who's going to get a new deal. Titus Howard has played better football. They're starting to get a good offensive line coach, build the staff, which we've talked about. But let's say you do this. Let's say you bring Garoppolo in. You still draft your quarterback because he's under a rookie contract, and Garoppolo's not going to make $40 million a year. They've got cap space and assets. Then go get yourself with the 12th pick. One thing they haven't done in a while, Grant.
Yeah, but if I'm Garoppolo, why do I want to go to Houston?
Right, that's it. But then again, isn't that going to be the case everywhere? Why do you want to go to Indianapolis? Why would you want to go to Carolina? They're all going to be in the first-round quarterback market. So that's what I'm saying. Carolina's got to be looking at possibly drafting a guy like Stroud or one of those guys, unless they get Darnold back and they think he's going to be a star. I doubt it. You got the Houston Texans. I guess maybe Tennessee, but depending on Tannehill. I mean, so the places that Garoppolo is going to end up are not going to be
sexy.
A team. Maybe the Raiders. Since Brady, I don't know. But you get my point. They're all going to be teams looking for a guy, but also have to build. So if you're fortunate that Garoppolo says 2-year deal, $40 million or whatever it is, draft a quarterback, and you go out and show out, there'll always be a place for him to play. I don't know if it's here. I'm just using that as an example. But I would start to load up on offense because they don't do they haven't done that. And then 12th pick, go get me the wide receiver from TCU or Addison from Southern Cal. And then in the second round, there's some tight ends out there you can go get. And then you load up on playmakers because I got a defensive coach. We've got some young guys on defense. But listen, they're not making the playoffs next year if Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback.
No.
The point is that you got to find the veteran who's willing to do that without giving up assets. If it's Garoppolo, there's a mention of Baker Mayfield. I don't think Baker's going to be the guy here. Maybe he is, but I still think that if you're DeMeco Ryans, even though you're a defender, you know how important a quarterback is to defend. Some guy has got to be a guy you want. So, but they may go and say, screw it. We'll wait till next year and take a chance, and we're just going to stick with a veteran and Davis Mills to compete, and we'll draft Will Anderson, and we'll draft a wide receiver, and we'll see you on draft day. Who knows? But you know this, Grant. You ain't getting a consistent Super Bowl without a dominant quarterback. I don't care how good a defense you play.
C-Dog asked a very interesting question about Baker Mayfield. Did his small sample size in the Rams change your perception of him as a quarterback if you're a team that needs a QB?
I never had a bad perception of Mayfield. I actually have always favored him. Now, the problem is was good one, bad one, good one, bad one. That's how he went his 4 years. And then in Carolina, it didn't work out. I've always believed Mayfield's better than a bust. Now, I've never – listen, if we go – think about how if they beat Kansas City in the playoff game, and that's the Henne game, and they go on and win and get themselves to the AFC Championship game, how the direction of Baker Mayfield's career goes. Just think for a second.
It's a great point.
And then last year, if he just stays away from trying to be a tough guy with a shoulder injury and doesn't expose himself because he can't play normal, I think we're having a different conversation. But he's the first pick of the draft, and everybody thinks that if you're not a superstar, you're an automatic bust. He's still got a chance to ask Geno Smith about this to revitalize his career.
Yeah.
Now, so I wasn't willing to say Baker Mayfield's a hack. You better go and find another career. But I think Baker Mayfield needed to get back, Grant, to health and to a swagger that says, but also mixed in with I'm a walk-on. Treat everybody like you're a walk-on. The mentality he had when he was a walk-on is when he played his best football. Like he had the biggest chip in the world on his shoulder. When he became a commercial and a big star and all that, it was like, well, it felt to me like it became comfortable. I may be wrong because I actually think the guy can play. He was accurate in college. He just got to adjust a few things. Is he worth a flyer? Yes, he is worth a guy bringing in at a price and a show-me price for somebody and compete, and there is no doubt. But I wouldn't mind him going and competing with somebody and seeing.
Yeah.
Because if he wins that, it beats the guy out, that'll tell me the old Baker Mayfield that we thought was going to be good is back. He was drafted number 1 for a reason. Some people. So I didn't hate him. I've always thought that he could be a player. He's got a long way to go to get back to what we thought as the first pick, and he may never get there. Yeah. But I don't think Baker Mayfield's career as a starter is done.
Okay, I want to talk to you about the Giants because they got an interesting situation offensively. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley. To me, Daniel Jones is my quarterback. I'm going to make sure that I keep him. Or I've seen enough in him from this past year that I'm okay committing to him. Shell lives of running backs. We've gone over that. Look at Ezekiel Elliott of Dallas. He's a prime example. They gave him a boatload of money. He really hasn't done anything since then for all intents and purposes. I understand how important Saquon Barkley was to the Giants last year. I get that. I also understand that you can replace running backs in the NFL a hell of a lot easier than you can replace quarterbacks. I personally, if it comes down to one or the other, I know who I'm giving my money to. I wouldn't give Saquon a ton of money right now. What about you if you're a general manager?
Well, if you're Saquon Barkley, what do you want? I first off, of course, listen, Grant, take a look at Kansas City. You know who one of the biggest keys in this game is Isaiah Pacheco.
Yep.
The guy didn't get a sniff in the first 4 or 5 rounds of this draft.
Yep.
And now look at him. He's become a guy that when you talk to people, like when I interview people on my show or listen to NFL people talk, guess whose name pops up into the conversation outside of Kelsey and Mahomes? Guess who becomes the most important? Yep. His name's being mentioned. So
that's vintage Kansas City, Sean. They
exactly
do that all the time.
They do, as do a lot of other teams. The 49ers do it. It's Mostert, and it's the next guy, and it's the next guy. Now, listen, then you get McCaffrey, and yes, it's a different level. I get it. If I'm the Giants and I can keep Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, I'm in. If you're saying I got to make a decision, quarterback stays the other go because what's your option there? You're not getting a high draft pick because you won, made the playoffs. You're also, as you look down the okay, so you want to bring in $40 million Carr. Are you assuming is Carr better than Daniel Jones right now? He may put up bigger numbers, but I think Daniel Jones is starting to come into his own. Is Garoppolo going to give you more wins than Daniel Jones? And now a little sidebar to this. Wink Martindale's a front runner, one of them for the Indianapolis Colts job.
Yep.
And Mike Kafka's a front runner to have to go coach and try to teach if he gets the job.
And the Cardinals.
Get Kyler Murray into learning how to play. And if you lose both coordinators,
oh boy,
now what's the narrative there for Brian Dable and what's he do? So, listen, I think Daniel Jones warrants. I didn't say $40 million a year, but Daniel Jones should be back as the starting quarterback for the Giants. I love Barkley, but I'm with you. I think Derrick. I'm thinking about the top running backs. What's the top running back make? Less than 15 million? 12, 14, somewhere in there, Grant.
Yeah.
Am I prepared to pay him more than a Derrick Henry right now? I need another year of this by Barkley and say, oh, okay. But I'd give him good money to keep him because he's a playmaker. But running backs, and I'm not trying to diminish or shrink them.
All right.
But I can tell you this. I can find a third or fourth. Look at Pierce. Why would I draft a running back? Now, Bijan Robinson, he's a difference maker in this draft. Yep. I'm still not picking him in the first 10 picks. Unless it's like the Philadelphia Eagles. They got a Pro Bowler, Miles Sanders. If all of a sudden you got all this and you say, shit, Bijan Robinson's sitting there with the pick we get from New Orleans, let's just take him. Yeah, I get it. Load up on weapons. Why the hell wouldn't you? But if you're a team that has other needs, I don't think running back can be your first one. So that's just me.
All right. You have been in the NFL locker room. You understand the dynamics of this a hell of a lot better than any of us on this stream right now. You just mentioned coordinators, Martindale, Kafka. They're finalists. When you get right down to it, Sean, how critical are those coaches to the continuity of a team? We talk about the Giants. You use them as an example. They improve by leaps and bounds. We get that. They have a lot of momentum right now. What happens if they lose one or both of those coaches? How big of a blow is that? Or do we make too much out of losing a coordinator?
I don't think we make enough of it.
Okay.
I don't. I think, as I'll say, and I'll say it loud, yes, the head coach sets the culture. The fact that we shrink or diminish, he's hired this guy, hired that guy. I'm just telling you, while Brian Dable made a difference, Kafka and Wink Martindale on the everyday meetings and what they were doing have a bigger impact on the day-to-day preparation of your players. Not that Dable doesn't go in and see offense, defense, stand in a meeting and go to his office and watch tape, say, no, I don't want to run this. But I'm just listen, I love Bobby Ross in San Diego, but Ralph Friedgen was our coordinator. Bobby would come in and do it. You think that I spent more time talking offense with Bobby Ross or Ralph Friedgen? Brian Billick, Tom Moore, Mark Trestman, Bob Schnelker in Minnesota, or Denny Green or Jerry Burns? Listen, they oversee it. I can't be now. Brian Dable, listen, if you're good enough for like a Mike Tomlin, you keep losing players and coaches and keep replacing them and keep winning. God bless you. But it's hard to do when you lose. Man, if you're a Giants fan, I'd be so bummed. I mean, I'd be happy for Kafka and Wink Martindale, but you're just getting started with this shit. And then I have to go in and get another coach on both sides to say, with our personnel, can you do the same thing? Now, they may be able to, but please, folks, do not diminish.
Okay.
We talk about offensive line continuity. Grant, the longer you can keep those guys together,
I agree with that.
The coordinators, I think they're invaluable, and I think it's going to be devastating loss to the Giants if you lose both of them.
There are exceptions, correct me if I'm wrong here, like a team like the 49ers. When you lose a Robert Saleh, you got D'Amico Ryans, who, by the way, I understand she's a really good coach, but that's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making here is if your personnel is so damn good, okay, right, that makes a big difference. If your personnel is as good as the 49ers have been on defense the last couple of years, there are a lot of defensive coordinators that could be successful with that personnel, correct?
Yes, and twofold with that, Grant. It's a great point. One is it's the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. I can be the greatest play caller in the world, and I sit here and think, man, I go call plays. If I got average players, this whole staff may get fired at some point. But if I got average coordinators and listen, I know Andy Reid's there, but in truth, if Mahomes ends, let's say he went to the Giants and Kafka was gone and whoever else is in there, is Mahomes still going to have success? Yeah. Now, maybe a little different if they don't have players. I mean, but yes. And I think Andy Reid's the best play caller in the world. There's no doubt because he knows how to fit it in. Those are unique guys. But I can be listen, I've watched guys go from coach of the year with good players to the next year, free agents leave, and the next thing you know, people think they're horseshit, and they're not. They didn't forget how to coach. You get my point, Grant. It is so players. It is the Jimmies and the Joes. Now, when you got X's and O's and Jimmies and Joes, you win Super Bowls, and you constantly are in the mix, and you're consistent. I'm not diminishing the coaching part of it, but great coaches with bad players get fired. Great players with average coaches get contract extensions. Great players and great coaches win Super Bowls. Yeah. And one other thing about that, Grant, it's not just the coordinators. And you mentioned the 49ers. What the 49ers do and what the Rams keep doing is you watch these. What they do is they hire guys that – and Nick Saban does it in college football. He ball hogs all the former head coaches and makes them analysts. So when one guy leaves, bam, I'll grab him. Another guy leaves, Butch Jones, I'll plug him in, or he'll go get another job. They've got so much intel and so much experience in the building. You're getting it from five former head coaches. Then all of a sudden they go on somewhere else, and they're not even on your full staff. They're still getting paid from their previous team. So the 49ers, what they do, D'Amico Ryans, when Robert Saleh and Kyle Shanahan got together and hired D'Amico Ryans, guess what? You hired a guy that you felt at one point in time was going to be able to step right in when Saleh left. Not just some guy you don't want to be a head coach, some guy you're preparing for it. And that's the way you do it. It's not just the coordinators. It's the tight end coach. It's the running back coach. It's the offensive line coach. And then those guys are prepared to take the next step up because you took the time to hire the right guy. You didn't just hire your buddy, or you didn't just hire some guy who was a nepotism hire. That's why the 49ers, Steelers, they sustain success with same people in the building.
All right, Super Bowl week beginning. And you and I have covered many of Super Bowls, being on Radio Row and all the hoopla. And I've always found it, gee, what the hell are you going to talk about all day long for 5 days? I get the buildup. I understand it's the Super Bowl. Sean, is this a toss-up game in your mind? Are these teams fairly even? Would you be surprised if this game ended up being lopsided? And by lopsided, I mean a game that ends up by 10 or more points.
I think if it's a blowout, Kansas City would catch fire in the pass game.
Okay.
If it's a blowout. The Philadelphia Eagles have been the most complete team in football all year long. I don't care. You can say what you want. They have. Find me a weakness. You can't. Now, people look and say, well, the run game. I think the run game where they're 16th or 18th or somewhere. But, Grant, think about 70 sacks, and most of them are by guys that put their hand in the ground. Yep. So what happens is when you'll sacrifice a little run game to tee off on a quarterback. And what they also do, they don't want to give up the home run in the back end. So they'll play some zone. Mm-hmm. And when you play two high safeties, you're supposed to be able to run the ball against that because they don't have an extra guy down. This is a danger game. Why? Because we know Philadelphia is two-dimensional with those great wide receivers.
Yep.
The running game and Jalen Hurts makes you three-dimensional. He can throw it, he can run it, and they can run it. But with the back end of Philadelphia, you keep an eye on this, is if they pressure and don't get to Mahomes,
yep,
can they hold up on the perimeter, even though the receivers aren't as good as Philadelphia's receivers? The other thing is on the other side of Kansas City, you're going to – I don't know how you're going to do it, but to be able to turn them into a one-dimensional team and not give up the home run if you're playing man coverage. Both of these guys, these defensive coordinators, Gannon and Spagnuolo, are very good. Their defenses were I think Kansas City was a top 5 or 8 defense in the league this year, which is shocking, Grant.
Yep.
If you're going to beat them, I think it's in the secondary. That means you got to play action. And if the run game for both is working, Isaiah Pacheco and Miles Sanders, people are going to start to get nosy and creep up. That's when the home run comes. And if you're going to blitz Hurts, if the first guy misses, you are screwed. Same with Mahomes. There's so many similarities, maybe different in the way they go about their business, but more home run hitters on Philly since Tyreek's gone, but find me how you're going to stop Kelsey. And if you double him, then what? So it'll be the other guy that may make a play, and Pacheco's a guy, and can Valdez-Scantling rear his head like he did last week? So I think it's a pick-em. Philadelphia is a more complete team, but there is the Mahomes factor who can flat-ass take over a game.
All right, final thing for you. We have a lot of Kings fans watching on the stream. They're playing back-to-back games against the Rockets. The Kings have not played well as of late. They've lost 5 of 8. We understand the Rockets are in a complete rebuild. Do the Rockets have light at the end of the tunnel right now? Talk to me about this team in the process. I know a lot of Kings fans would be curious. Right. A little quick scouting report.
Yeah, a lot of assets, Grant, obviously moving forward after this. But they are, when Smith and – Jalen, they can score. Grant, they've got some young scorers that can get after it. The problem is the parts are better than the sum. One thing I do know, Grant, and you know this covering the game and broadcasting for well over 30 years, they don't play defense. There is zero commitment. Now, I know it drives Silas crazy, but they're young players. Now, Jalen Kareem can come on there the way you're playing Hang 38 tonight. He could.
Yeah, I understand that. Sure.
They also, the score could be 130 to 122. And that
the Kings play no defense either.
That's what I'm saying. So take the over, you'd think, in the game, right? So young, a little bit immature. They'll be trying to get some movement to move a piece or two at the trade deadline. They can score, and if it ever comes together defensively, and the sum gets better because they've got, the point guard can get after it. Şengün is a really good player, Grant. He's going. He'll double you, and they can score, but the problem is they play Matador defense. It's Olay the whole time, and if you can score and shoot halfway decent, you'll be in every game against the Rockets.
Does anybody go to the Rockets games, or is the place empty every night?
I think someday it's not fully empty. It depends on who the visiting team is, Grant, right? But they've got some potential. But you know how that is. If it's not production, it gets coaches fired. But keep an eye as the year goes on and as we roll on. I think Şengün's their best player.
He's good.
Oh, I do. I think he's their best
Yeah.
player. But they've got some young stars that need to mature, and they need to do it faster than they have been.
Buddy, you have a good week. Thanks very much, man.
Talk to you Friday with our picks and stuff. I look forward to it, brother. Thank you.
Me too. All right, that's good stuff with Sean Salisbury right here. Love talking with Sean each and every week on Mondays and Fridays. Want to thank New Works Plumbing for all of your plumbing needs and repairs. Just go to sackserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. That's New Works Plumbing. They've got a fix for you. sackserviceplumbing.com, or you can call that number on your screen. Kings and the Rockets tonight. Ryan in Sacktown. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how you doing today, Grant?
I'm doing good. All right, so Kings have lost 5 and 8. They're reeling, and they're taking on a team that's not very good. And with Fox there, I mean, this should – I know we keep on saying this, but there's just no excuse. We said that with the New Orleans game, but we're going to say it again tonight. We said that last night. We're going to say it again tonight.
Yeah, I think the time for talk's pretty much done at this point with the recent stretch of games. And I got a little nervous with what Sean was explaining because recently the Kings haven't been able to do any of those things. Halfway shoot, play defense.
No.
So hopefully, in their first 2 meetings this year, they put up 139 and 135 respectfully. Hopefully with Fox back, that gets them back on track.
All right. Well, again, De'Aaron Fox is going to play tonight. And I thought if De'Aaron's from Houston. This is a big – he always loves going back and playing at home. And but the good news is he's back. So you get that lift. You shouldn't need De'Aaron Fox to beat the Houston Rockets, though. But you shouldn't have needed De'Aaron Fox to beat the New Orleans Pelicans last night, and they got blown out. So I don't know what to expect with the Kings. Even with De'Aaron Fox, this team has not been playing that well lately. All right, I chronicled this on my rants today. This team, in my opinion, I've talked about this, Ryan. I've talked about this even after wins. I don't think the Kings are playing well right now. And I'm not talking about because they lost 2 in a row. I don't think they've played that well over the last month. There's just way too much up and down, way too much inconsistency.
Yeah, exactly, Grant. I agree with you 100%. And we'll clear it up right now again because I see it in the chat. It's not because they're tired. So the Kings are just very rigid right now. They don't have any flow to them. You can tell they're a little bit uptight, just not playing the way that they usually play, right? When we see them be successful. So hopefully we see that change tonight. But Grant, it's not going to be a one-night performance thing. We need to see this improve over the long haul.
And, people are going to start jumping ahead because after these 2 games with Houston, you come home and you got the new-look Dallas Mavericks. Don't know if Luka is going to be on the floor as he's still been sitting it out with his injury. So there's some pizzazz. Then you're at Phoenix, and then it is the All-Star break. But between now and Thursday, it's the trade deadline. I still think Monty McNair needs to figure out a way to get a veteran backup point guard. Mitchell is not the answer. If Fox goes down even for a week, all right, let's say Fox misses 3 games. Well, you're only 3 games right now from the 10th spot, okay? I don't think the personnel on this team right now can make up even for a short-term absence of De'Aaron Fox. To me, that's something that the Kings really need to figure out in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, Grant, the question becomes what you're willing to give up, right? And I don't think anybody's, besides Fox and Sabonis, I think everybody else is touchable on this roster. Monty McNair has shown that over his tenure as GM. But I would like to see the Kings, if they do move for a point guard, which I agree with, move early in the trade deadline and not wait till the end of the trade deadline, because then the market kind of could get overinflated or it can be underinflated. You don't know, but make your move now and get the player that you think you want instead of waiting and panicking at the last minute thinking that we have to make a move.
All right. Well, for the Kings, again, it's a quick turnaround, but they seem to play better on their second nights of back-to-back. The Kings are now 2-8. 2-8. When they play a team that played the night before. That's not the case with the Rockets. They were off last night while the Kings were losing to New Orleans. So the good news is we're going to be on this stream right here at halftime and then after the game with the Kings and the Rockets. And this has already been a bad road trip, all right? If you win these next 2 games, it's a so-so road trip. Your chances of a good road trip are out the window. You're not going to have a good road trip. And do you know what this road trip reminds me of? It reminds me of that homestand, if you remember, going back to more than a month ago when the Kings came off that 6-game road trip and they had Charlotte,
Yeah.
and then they had the Lakers, and then they had Washington, and they won the Lakers game then. But and we thought, okay, this is going to be where the Kings pad the schedule. Didn't happen. It actually went the other way. This is the way I'm looking at this road trip right now. This was an opportunity, Ryan, to really stretch things out between the Kings and everyone else. And they, quite frankly, have had a very disappointing road trip.
Grant, arguably the last opportunity this season when you look at the schedule for them to really pad their record. And like you said, don't look now. You've got the Clippers that are 1 game back of you, and you got the Suns that are 2 games back of you, and the Clippers are rolling right now. So, they've got to get this figured out. I don't know what they do if the break refreshes them and just kind of gets them reset. But they've got to do something because this next stretch is going to be brutal.
Hey, Benjamin, let me tell you something. It's not a good road trip. Okay. Stop it. Okay. It's not a good road trip. You lost to New Orleans. Okay. I don't want to hear about not having Fox on the floor last night. They did not have Zion Williamson. They didn't have Brandon Ingram. Okay. They were, who was the other starter they were without? Jesus, I can't even remember. Listen. So Benjamin, stop it. Stop it without not Fox last night. You lost to Indiana, who had lost 10 of 11 games. 10 of 11 games coming in. All right, you lost to them. All right, you don't tell me this is a good road trip if you win both games. Not a good road trip. If you win both games, it's an okay road trip. It's not a good road trip. You're wrong.
And Benjamin, Grant and I talk about 5-game sample sizes. The reality of the situation is they have not been playing well with Fox on the floor. And I know Grant said that, but that's a key point. So you take him away. This has been a terrible road trip any way that you cut it, and it borders on decent if they win the next 2.
Well, they better not lose one of these next 2 games. All right, Ryan, we're looking forward to it, buddy. I will talk to you at halftime, my friend.
Sounds good, Napes.
All right, good stuff there. And again, make sure you join us right after the contest as well. So halftime and the post-game show right here on If You Don't Like That. Thanks very much, everyone.